and welcome back to another episode. That's, that point where you're supposed to like drink your water before you do the intro for your show. Yeah, I didn't do that. Or tea or something to clear the lunchtime phlegm. But alas, folks, we're not that professional here. We're just here to talk about crazy, stupid marketing and how you cannot do that, but instead do some really meaningful marketing and spend your time in a meaningful way from a marketing perspective. Because, there's just a lot of marketing things that are being done in this world that don't feel good to anybody. The people who are doing them, the people who are consuming them. And there's a lot of time, effort, resources, energy, money that are going into these things. These are the crazy, stupid things that we talk about in the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show. But more importantly, what we talk about on the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show is how to not do those things. What do we need to know about ourselves, about our business, about our values, about being a human, wink, wink, a hint to the conversation that we're having today, in order for us to make good decisions about marketing instead of just doing marketing to do marketing. It doesn't work, folks. And this is where we're breaking it all down so you can do what works instead of just doing stuff. Before we get into the conversation today, I want to remind everybody that there's this nifty little chat functionality that exists on pretty much any platform that you're watching this on. So if you are on Facebook, if you are on LinkedIn, if you are on YouTube, there's this beautiful little comment section where you can register your thoughts, questions, perspectives, insights, all of the things associated with the show. And we would love, love, love to hear your voice as part of the conversation. Because while it looks like two wonderful people up here having a conversation, if we can make it 3, 4, 5, 20 people having the conversation, then we all get to learn more perspectives, more insights. So please, please, please feel free to share your perspectives, especially if you are also a marketer. So this isn't just like the Tracy show and only Tracy gets to show up as a marketing expert and biggest. We all can. There's room for all of us. So get into the conversation. We would love, love to have you in the conversation today. Also, if you're not watching this live and you still have things you'd like to share, please also put them in the comments because people can see them after the fact, and that's also helpful. All right. So today, what are we talking about? Well, there's a lot of conversation in the market. Marketing is like every other industry and loves jargon, right? Every industry has its own jargon. Very commonly in marketing, two things that you will see is either B2B or B2C. And what that stands for is business to business or business to consumer. So it's really talking about, from a sales perspective, are we selling to businesses or are we selling to consumers? And you'll see people who are experts in B2B, and you'll see experts who are in B2C. And people are making up their own all the time, which is what we're doing here today. Well, technically, Mags owned it first, and then I just made it the title of the show. I'm sure there's other people out there using it today too. But what we're talking about today is human to human marketing. So if you're a robot and you tuned in today, you can probably turn it off because you're a robot and you would be like R to H or something. Won't be that insightful for you. But if you're a human and you tuned into the show today, then you were in luck, because we were talking about how do the humans that create marketing resonate with the humans who consume marketing. And at the end of the day, it's a human doing both of those things. And folks, I would even encourage you to think about, even if you're using AI today to do some of your content creation, which a lot of people are, that there was some kind of human prompt that went into that. So there is still a human activity. And what we're going to focus on in the conversation today is all of these human activities and how they can either manifest in a meaningful marketing message or perhaps not manifest in something meaningful. So with that framing, let's meet our guest for today. Megs, can you tell us a little bit more about you and why human-to-human marketing is something that's so important to you?
Sure. So I focus a lot around messaging with people, and I say that I help my clients create marketing or assets with heart and soul. Which I think what you're saying as well, with the AI, I think we're sort of losing sight of just sharing who we are as people. People get a little bit, I think people get a little bit lost in marketing, and it becomes something that's sort of separated from themselves. And maybe because we're feeling a little bit icky about it, we try and push it away a little bit. But we're really what marketing is, and I think you will agree, is making connections to other people. And so that's where human-to-human marketing comes from for me. I think, the B2B and the B2C idea, we talk so much about who are your ideal clients and what is the avatar you're trying to sell to. And I think we're losing sight of the fact that we're trying to sell to people.
Well, and I think this is an interesting thing about the concept of a profile, persona, anything that falls into these categories of ideal target audience or client. I mean, I could spend an entire show just giving you different words,
different phrases for that same concept. Yeah.
Right. There's people we want to sell to, and there's people we don't want to sell to. Right. And there's and more so, there are people who will want to buy our products, and there's people who don't want to buy our products or don't need our products, and a whole bunch of other things. But when we do these exercises of creating this profile, and then we get all of the demographics and psychographics, and we maybe even create, because AI can help us with this now, we create this little image of what they look like, and then we're like, yes, we have this thing. Except here's the thing. That is a mashup of all human traits. It's not actually a person. It's not like you can be like, there's that person who matches this picture. It's not really a thing. It gets our idea focused on going narrow. And while we're not here to talk to everybody, because not everyone in the world is listening to the show right now. Not everybody cares, right? And that's fine. I don't control that. Megs doesn't control that. You, the viewer, controls it if you want to come and watch. Right? But it's humans making that decision. And some of the profile matches, sometimes the profile doesn't match, sometimes the narrative resonates, sometimes the narrative doesn't resonate. There's not really this magic answer, is I guess what I would say.
Yeah, and I think it's not, I think even we can think about the ideal client as to who are the kinds of people we want to work with, right? I think that is important, because I also, you hear people go oh, I could help anyone with anything. And I'm like, well, that's not going to resonate with anyone, because nobody can
I can't help somebody in Italy shine their shoes, right? I'm not in Italy.
Right. But is that person, what is happening? I moved, I think. I'm like, why am I only half here? But yeah, it's this thing of you can't, you have to speak to someone. I think, whatever you're putting out there, it has to somehow resonate with a person. And so I think that's why it's so important to show, and especially when you're a solo entrepreneur, right? You are your business. And so, some people try and sort of have this, I have to have this sort of professional facade. And we've had enough conversations to know that neither one of us fits the description of a corporate professional persona, with pink headphones and
which is kind of sad, but go on.
But I think show all of your weirdness and all of your colors, and really speak to what you stand for in the world, because people are going to have to be able to deal with you. And if they can't deal with you in your marketing message, then they're likely not going to have a good experience working with you, right? And so for me, then the marketing becomes much more about just show your madness and your genius, and so it comes down to showing your values and your I say to people as well, if you're likely to swear when you're on a call with a client, then Am I allowed to swear on your show, by the way? Because it's your show.
Yeah,
But
I don't know if LinkedIn like bleeps it out. But I think my
so,
viewers
but
are,
the
they've
point,
heard
but
it
the
before.
point being, right? Like it's the point being, like, and not that you have to swear every post you do, but if that's just how you speak and how you interact with your clients, then it doesn't make sense to hide that until until they've paid you, because
Well, and I think this is, it's interesting because I had a client at one point who was like my favorite mashup of things, right? So like a product designer, but also a stand-up comedian, and like a big like Deadpool, constantly dropping the F-bomb scenario. And if you watch this show, you might know who I'm talking about, because you've experienced his personal brand. But his like corporate brand, he did communication workshops, but he did them very differently because he has this personality and he has stand-up comedy experience and all of these things. And so the way he coaches it is very different. But the way it was shown on his business website was like him wearing a button-up shirt, and like I was like, I've never even seen you wear a button-up shirt. Like this is, we put so much emphasis into this, like the ideal persona of ourselves, right? Now we're trying to create a connection between this kind of fake persona of ours and this kind of fake persona of
yeah,
someone else.
but it's weird, right? Because people can sense that something's off a lot of times. Like people catch on to that a lot, and if we're feeling like someone's not genuine with us, then we'll probably fill that in with the worst possible explanation, which is
Used car
your
salesman.
scam.
I mean, I think the used car salesmen get a bad rap, but they fell into this category for a long time. It's like, just do whatever you need to do to make the sale. And I think this is interesting too, because it's not, I mean, I've seen that manifest in a marketing perspective in the digital environment. Right? I'm just going to show up and I'm going to spam people on LinkedIn, and I'm going to assume that they need what I have, and I'm just going to like I'm going to convince them that they need it. And like, I so often, I mean, one, I have a 6-year-old, so like, I know that I can't convince anybody to do anything. Right? But like, how do you as an individual feel when someone's trying to convince you of something you just like wholeheartedly do not believe? That like, if someone is like, the sky is water, and you're like, no, the sky is air. And they're like, no, it's water. And they keep spending all this time trying to convince you that it's water. And you're like, you're out to lunch. Just like, whoa there, I'm leaving. All of that effort that goes into convincing, especially when there's like absolutely no alignment, is just a huge amount of wasted effort. And like, I think it's important for people to be able to look at their marketing, whether that's content or whether it's your website or whether it's a script you've created for people at a trade show, right? Like, are you doing that? Because if you're doing that and it doesn't work on you, why do you think it's going to work on other people?
Well, because the books say it does.
It's true. Well, and like, honestly, this is one of the reasons why the show exists, is because there's a lot of things that say a lot of things about not the truth.
Well, but
Also,
that's,
it's not even
one
like,
of the things I comment on a lot is when people go like, oh, you have to be consistent. And I go like, okay, so what does consistency mean?
right.
And for a lot of people, consistency apparently means you have to post 5 times a week. To me, consistency means regardless of where a person meets you on their customer journey, from when they first hear about you until you offboard them as your client, they have to essentially meet the same person. That is consistency. You can't suddenly change once people get to the next step, right? Because that feels unsafe.
Right.
And when people feel unsafe, they're not going to buy from you. It's really that simple. And I think the more we can show up as genuine, full, flawed, weird human beings, the more people will feel safe. And if they don't, then that's fine too, because there are enough people who will feel safe. and feel that you are a nice person to hang out with, right?
And I think it's just like if we, I like to think about it as if like, who are you going to be friends with? Right? Because I meet a lot of people, and there's people I meet and I'm like, yeah, we are going to be friends. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know if we're going to collaborate. Like, I don't know what it means, but I get that like feeling that you're like, yeah, yes, this is going to go somewhere. And you meet people and you don't get that feeling. And it's not that they're a bad person or that it wasn't even a particularly good conversation. It was just like, yeah, no, not my person. And we can each only have so many of them, right? That you could spend dedicated time with. And when we think about that from a friendship perspective and we extrapolate that from a marketing perspective, then we can get a good idea of like, who do I want to have a conversation with? Who do I feel like it's very difficult to have a conversation with? And if I feel like those people are really difficult to have a conversation with, am I, as a marketer, going to get jazzed to show up to have those conversations? Is it going to be easy for me to show up with consistency? Probably not.
No, and it doesn't make the work fun. And if the work's not fun, then I don't do as good a job, right? Like it's just really, I mean, honestly.
But let's talk about this like human AI relationship, because I also feel like a lot of marketing has to do with energy, right? And if I show up and I have energy and I'm excited to like talk about what I'm going to talk about, or I'm excited to write a blog post or those type of things, then that comes across in my creation. If I'm not excited to do a thing, equally that comes across in my creation. And so now, if you're using AI to co-create, let's give that we'll say, give it the benefit of the doubt, and you're not just using it to do all of its creation and it gets the credit. You're co-creating with it. There's like an energy you can bring to your AI prompt that takes it in one direction, or there's probably a I don't care energy that could get a mostly indifferent whatever response from AI too.
I think that is similar to what I was saying, where it's like, if we feel icky about marketing, then we try and push it away, right? Like it's that same thing. Like the more you disconnect from your marketing, the more you push it away. Like even if you outsource it to another human, if you don't feel the connection to the message that you're trying to put out there, it's going to fall flat, whether it's created by another human or it's created by AI. Just more so when it is AI, I think. But because AI can't, it's not
AI doesn't feel it, right? So like
AI doesn't feel it. I like that.
How it feels.
The human person can maybe infuse some of the feeling to it, but I think that you always like, you can outsource some of the tasks in your marketing, which I'm very happy about because that's what I do for people. But I don't think you can completely extract yourself from marketing your business. Like, there has to be a level of you showing up. And so for my clients, even just they spend an hour talking to me, right? Like everything I create for people is based off of interviews. So they have to be there and show up and tell me about what it is they want to talk about. Which
it's human to human, right? Like a human talking to you. And so you might be using another human as an orator or as a writer or as something. But I think this is, again, kind of the underlying concept when we peel away all of these layers of things. And there's lots of people who will tell you to outsource your marketing if you're not an quote unquote expert marketer, which I have lots of things to say about. But the point at the end of the day is it's still the message is coming from a human. Through which channels it goes to get to the human at the other side, that's called fun. Right? So it's not, we all have a funnel. Right? Everybody who's ever sold anything has a funnel. Okay? There's a way that people buy your stuff. But if you there's like a way through which you communicate the value. And there's a way a human consumes it. And right now, Actually, I saw this really interesting thing on a different, it was related to like how people meet their spouses nowadays. And from like 2004 to, so in the last 20 years, meeting people online went from like 0.8% of people to like 60% of people, right? So like most people meet their spouse now in the digital environment. And so we do a lot of things digitally, but that does not mean it can't be human to human using digital technology. So, Meg, from that perspective, what are some of your thoughts in how we can show up as human using technology?
Well, I think that where we sometimes may get it wrong is when we think that that technology can do it for us, right?
Right, replace us.
All the digital stuff is tools, right? And it's like you have to figure out what the right tool for the right job is, right? Like if you want to, if you have a bit of wood and you want to make it into 2 bits of wood, then a hammer might do that for you, but probably not in the most effective way. So it's like how do I use this tool, and even how do I, like in that sort of view, even outsourcing to humans, then the other human becomes a tool as well, a tool that adds expertise, hopefully, and has their own ideas and viewpoint. But I think that what happens a lot is that people don't address why they feel uneasy about their marketing. And until you address that part of it, then whatever you do is going to, you're going to give it that uneasy energy, right? Like we were saying, like whatever you create, you infuse it with the energy that's behind it. And that's why I think if we can go away from like even this idea that we always have to be selling the whole time, like stop trying to sell to everyone the whole day. Like it's super annoying when every conversation you have with a person, they're trying to shove something down your throat. Just have a conversation. Tell them about what you like. And I know that we've had that conversation as well, right? Like where it's the vibe that counts. Like, and you have these conversations, and sometimes you have like a really good feeling, and sometimes that pays off next week, and sometimes it pays off 6 months down the line, and sometimes it
pays off 8 years down the line.
Right, like whatever. And I think, and I get that that's a really luxury position to be in, where you can say whatever. I don't care about the outcome of this conversation. I just want it to be a good conversation. I want us to both walk away from having met and having interacted, whether that's on a video call or in comments on one of your posts or whatever. But wherever you've engaged with a person, you want them, and you want you to walk away feeling, hey, I've had a nice connection with another human being. And I think sometimes in the digital world, we might forget that the other person is a human being. Like, especially if we try and sell to everyone, then essentially we're just interacting with, I don't know, money bags.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I think about it, this is why I love to have conversations with people, even if it's a digital conversation, because I feel like I can get your vibe, your story, your what have you. And I mean, I ask a lot of questions. So it gives people, I mean, you don't have to reveal all to me, but usually people do. But it's because like there's a lot of people who will connect with me on LinkedIn and then be like, oh, yeah, we sell blah, blah, blah. And you could probably use that. And I'm like, really? What about our interaction so far would tell you that is what I could need, besides you using some kind of demographic profiling, right?
Right.
You're a coach. I mean, kind of, right? Like I'm a marketing advisor. I coach sometimes. I identify.
Sometimes you get those messages and you're like,
Oh, my favorite one was like, so my title on LinkedIn is Authentic Marketing Advisor. There are 2 of them on LinkedIn. For a long time, there was just one, and then someone copied me. So now there's 2 of us. But like, This guy had reached out to me like, oh, when I work with authentic marketing advisors. And I was like, oh, really? What other authentic marketing advisors have you worked with? Because as far as I know, I'm the only one. And he was like, you got me. That's an automation. I'm like, of course it's an automation. Like, this is not that complicated, right? Like, we get it. But this is also, like, I'd really like to talk about this, Megs, because, like, what makes us do those things besides other people telling us that we should? Or maybe that's just it. But, like, if we don't like receiving that kind of message, why do we turn around and serve it to people thinking that it's going to work?
Honestly, cannot explain it to you.
Okay. I would love, if you happen to be in the chat and you would love to share your experience with that. And there's no rights or wrongs here, folks. This is personal experiences only. But I really love to understand.
I know. I don't know why we do it. I think because when you're looking around and you're learning to run a business, a lot of people come into business because they're really good at doing this particular thing, right? And then they have to suddenly learn all these other skills that come with that. And it's really overwhelming. And so they find all these sort of often also free resources in the start, or like cheap resources at the start, because we don't have a lot, we're trying to duct tape a business together. So, and it's like, there's so much marketing there's so much marketing around marketing that says,
True.
just do these 6 things and you will make this much money. Right. And I'm like, well, but if those 6 things are not aligned with who you are as a person, then you're not going to do the 6 things consistently.
You're not going to show up as a human to do the things. You're going to show up as a robot version of you to do things, just do things.
And it might resonate with the wrong people, and then you're going to get and if you get the wrong clients, that's sticky, right? Because now you're not going to get word of mouth, which is, referrals are so important. You might even get some bad reviews of your stuff. People are going to actually tell people not to work with you because they didn't enjoy the experience, right? So that's also a reason why I think we don't have to sell. We shouldn't even want to sell to everybody. We should want to sell to people that we vibe with, because then we can create a positive, worthwhile experience for those people. Mm-hmm. And we can give them true value, and then they walk away and they feel great about it, and we feel great about it, and then we all talk about how great we feel about that experience, and then other people go like, oh, we want to feel that great too. So right, that's how we build that reputation. And I think when we get into a place where, and again, I also understand the desperation of having to pay bills, so I'm not trying to sort of sidestep that, but it's like, if we can say, like, actually, if we have a sales call with a person and we say, actually, I don't think you're the right fit for me. Mm-hmm. That is a super powerful move to make, because it creates the space to find the person who is going to be the right fit. And I really think that if we get too sort of into, I have to pull everybody through the door, and we forget about who we are as human beings and who our clients are as human beings, right? If we only look at, I need that transaction, right, that's going to get us into trouble. Like, we can't look at our clients as money bags. We have to look at them as people, and we have to now work with those people and give them a good experience. And if they are not nice people because we were too keen on making the sale, right, then it's going to just be exhausting for us. Yeah. Those are always the clients where you're like, oh my God. Right?
You're fired. If you can. But okay, I do think that this is a place where maybe people might be thinking like, oh, but is that different if I'm trying to sell like volume to like B2C, right? Like I have a small ticket item, I need to sell it to like lots of people. But I think an example that I'm thinking of is that there is a like made in Canada clothing provider that I love. And their like clothes are like so good. The best t-shirt you will ever wear. Right. And it costs like $59. So it's not the Old Navy $7 t-shirt. It's legit. They are selling a consumer good and they want to sell lots of them. But they also have a belief that their business is based on, which is one, made in Canada, and it's more expensive to make it in Canada, and two, outstanding quality, right? So not like middle of the line
But it's
quality.
the same principle, right? Like, because so if as a brand, your values are made locally and good quality, and therefore has a higher price point, then you're not going to have the conversation with people who are just looking for the cheapest version of a product,
right?
Because they're not going to be your clients.
Convince them to buy your thing. That's not how they assess a purchase.
And if you would, then they're probably going to be complaining to everybody how expensive it was,
right.
How much money they had to pay for it.
Yeah.
Whereas at the same time, if you're producing super cheap as can be t-shirts that are,
you can wear them 3 times and then you have to use them as
right. But then you're trying to get the people who love a bargain, right? Like who not spending a lot of money on something is an important factor. So it still comes to the same thing, because then now if you convince someone who's looking for good quality and sort of fair wages that have been paid for this t-shirt to get made, they're gonna not feel good about that purchase because they've so it still comes down to what are the core values of the human in the business and the human as the consumer, or or the client, or however you want to see it.
Well, and that's why I wanted to
down to the values, right?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I think a lot of times when people get to the point where they just want to sell volume, maybe when you're a small business, they can keep the values, but then this like narrative about I just need anybody to buy these shirts becomes the overarching narrative, and you give away all of those like brand values that actually built your business to this point. And then what are you becoming, and are you going to be proud of that because you made X amount of revenue? And I do think there are people who are just specifically like revenue driven. But then that's also like, be honest about it. We're profits above everything else. And this is how we do things here. And I think having that like clarity of what you stand for a brand, it allows you to align your marketing with the rest of your product and your sales and attract the right people. And
have that consistency throughout your entire business, because that's where the consistency comes in as well, right? Like whatever your core values are, they are going to give you a consistent voice and a consistent brand image and a consistent everything in your business, because everything goes back to, but who am I, or who are we as people and as a business?
Mm-hmm. So that's on the B to C side. I'd like to talk about the B to B side a little bit more too, just because I think specifically when it comes to B2B, one of the things, especially B2B service providers, right? If you have a product and your product is your product, and honestly, I'd probably put you more into the B2C category from the framing of this next part of the conversation. But if you're a service provider, you could do a lot of things that help a lot of people, right? And it's not about saying I could do anything to help anybody. Like I'm not going to help people with their graphic design. That's not something I'm good at. It's not a good use of anybody's time. But as an authentic marketing advisor, there's actually a lot of ways I can create value for a business. And so, yes, there is one perspective of creating your high ticket offer, and you have the one thing and you give it to all people, which is very well marketed in the entrepreneurship arena. but there's also the possibility of creating things that will help people. And so when you were talking about the conversations and what kind of like energy and vibe people leave a conversation with, I always feel like there's like, if I leave a conversation feeling connected, then I've created an opportunity to create something. I can create a client, I can create a referral partner, I can create a workshop, but I leave in like creation energy. And if I leave with this like transactional vibe, then it's
That's more of a strings
yes,
attached
no,
kind of vibe, right?
Well, it feels like a yes or a no, but there's nothing in the middle. There's no like creation opportunity. And so, like, what's your experience, Megs, in that arena, specifically from a B2B and the opportunity to create solutions instead of just have them prepackaged?
Yeah, I think, a prepackaged something is easy to talk about. Right? Like but I always say but it's the front door, right? It's just hey, this is something I could do for you. And I have driven many people insane because
this is why we're friends.
I'm not very good at sticking to one thing.
I think since I met you, you've had like at least 5 different.
Yeah, it's because everybody keeps telling me. Anyway, but yeah. So and that is also because I am. I think me as a human has changed a lot over the last few years, and so that is then reflected in my business because I am my business, and I think that we don't have to be so scared about that all the time, because again, like the core of what I'm doing and the values that I'm trying to that I have within that marketing space have remained consistent in all of those offerings, right? And but I really love how you described that. Like when you leave feeling connected, then there is room for creation. And I think the world isn't so black and white, and we're trying to sort of. I think sometimes we're trying to oversimplify it, and we have to understand. I think it's important that we as entrepreneurs understand what we can and cannot do and where our strengths are and what we're most successful. I often, rather than ask people who are your ideal clients, I ask them, who are you most successful with? Because that's a different question.
And not really.
And also not really. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But like, it's interesting when you think about that as the answerer of the question and you assess those two groups very differently. When really the people you're most successful working with, wouldn't you want to work with more of those people?
Yeah, exactly. But people answer that question so differently. Because when you ask them about their ideal client, they go into that avatar profile, 100 words for the same thing.
I work with marketers who blah 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 blah. I mean, and now you sound like all the people who are saying the exact same thing.
Yeah, and I think that is important, and I think AI contributes to this a lot. But people get so in there sort of wanting to sound a certain way that they then sound like everybody else. And I'm like, just sound like you, please.
Hashtag I help statements.
Yes.
Are we over those yet? Hopefully.
They can be a really useful tool to get some thoughts on paper and then make them different and talk about it in different ways.
I think the robots like them. They find it easy to process.
But I think, when we can kind of get our focus off what we want to get out of a conversation, then that creates space for something unexpected to happen. And the unexpected stuff often leads to really incredible things that we couldn't even have thought of, right?
But Mags, isn't society programming us to not be uncomfortable? We should want to just be comfortable all the time. That should be our optimum state. Right?
Well, I love being comfortable, and I absolutely detest people who tell me to leave my comfort zone all the time, because I also don't think that that is correct. Because then we are activating our nervous system and our fight or flight. And if we're in fight or flight, we're not going to create anything, and we're not going to connect to anyone, because that's not how our brains are programmed. We can stretch, right? We can stretch our comfort zone, and we can say, hey, I'm going to do something that feels a little bit exciting and makes me a little bit nervous, but I'm also not so far out of my comfort zone that it. So that's the stretch. That's the learning zone, I guess.
Yeah.
But I want everybody to stay within their comfort zone. All of that.
I always say that there's like two different kinds of discomfort. That there's discomfort in that you're doing something you would never do. And that's probably not a good way to use your stretch muscles. But if it's something where you're like, you saw this over here, and now that's like something we could do here, right? And you might be the only person who's interpreted it that way, but that was your interpretation. And so, yes, there's inherently risk with trying things we've never done before, but there's this level of discomfort in that, like, I would do this, but I'm not really sure what I'm doing, versus like, I would never do that, and now I feel like I'm being forced to do that. Whether it's part of a program or it's part of a corporate culture or a bunch of other reasons why you might feel like you have to do something you wouldn't do. That is actually not going to lead towards growth. It's just going to put you outside of your comfort zone and get into that nervous system response of like, I need to get back to safety. When you're doing it in alignment with like something you would do, then that leads towards personal growth.
But it brings it back to the core values. It brings it right back to, you have to stay in alignment with your core values. And because then, at least for me, and maybe that's why we're entrepreneurs, but that little bit of risk and that little bit of, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm sure I'm going to figure it out. I'll build the wings on the way down, right? That kind of feeling. There's also a little bit of excitement in that, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and if we don't enjoy a little bit of that excitement, then seriously, why are we entrepreneurs?
Well, I think a lot of times this has to do with our framing, right? So like when I extrapolate that concept and bring it back to marketing, I think a lot of times people assume marketing is this, right? And I have to do that. I run my own business. I have to do marketing. And it, like, is that statement wrong? No. But do you have to do this specific thing for marketing? No. Right? Like I say this, I've said this on the show many times, I'm sure, is that if there was one way to do marketing, everyone would be doing it the same way.
Yes.
Right? Because there would only be one way, except there isn't just one way. What Apple does is different than what Microsoft does, and they're both trillion-dollar companies.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be the same. It doesn't have to be this box. If this box stresses you out or gives you anxiety or makes you feel blah or whatever, what you have in that box is wrong. Sure, you need a box that says marketing. Marketing broken down to that basic level you shared at the beginning, Megs, of like communicating to people, connecting with people.
Yeah.
Some people might call that sales. You might do it. Anyway, you got to connect with people.
Yeah. And so whether you what if you put from a box or from a basket or from, I don't know,
pillowcase,
a jar, whatever, right? Like, make it your own. I had that conversation. I've given so many people permission to not be on video because and I think that time, we're still not out of this time, I don't think, where you have to do video because the algorithm likes video. And I'm like, but if you're terrified of video and you hate it as a medium, you're not going to come across as the brilliant person that you are, right? You're not going to do it because you hate it. So you're not going to be showing up. And who gives a shit about the algorithm? The algorithm's not here to make you money. The algorithm's
Well,
here
and
to
also,
make other people
if
money.
that fake version of you is now being optimized for the algorithm, like that's a terrible plan, right? Like
that is not the
what you
result
want the world to see of you? I mean, it's funny. I had like, it might have actually been my very first client ever when I like started my business, and he wanted to do video. So I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. Like, what do you want to like just, and I encouraged him just to like go live because they're like, what comes out, which he wouldn't do. But anyway, he finally sent me this video. And it was like so stiff and just like, because I talk, like, I know what it's like to actually talk to you in a conversation, right? That's not what it looks like. And so I asked him how much time he spent on it. 180 takes.
That is a lot of takes.
I don't even know how that turns into time, but that's too much time, folks. Too much time.
However long that was, even if that was a minute or 30 seconds per take, that is still too much time.
Way, way too much. And the thing is that like, and this is why I actually tell people, like, if you feel like you can show up on video and it actually, like, you feel like it's fun talking to the camera, you feel like it's a good representation of your energy, then cool. Do video, right? This is why I do live video and not pre-recorded video, because I feel weird showing up talking to my camera, right? Like, I would rather show up talking to a person. I think that's a better representation of me. And so I create the scenario.
Every conversation I've had with you so far, Tracy, is comparable to this conversation.
Thank you. I like to consider myself drinking my own Kool-Aid from an authenticity point of view. But the point is that, like, that's exactly the point. Is that if you meet me in person or in a virtual coffee chat or where have you, this is
but
what
that's
you
what
get.
I'm saying. That is consistency. Isn't you have to post 5 times a week. Consistency is show up as the same person, regardless of where they meet you. And because I sometimes say to people, like, if you market a product because you're a writer and a reader, and so you deliver your courses as written things, then what is the point of marketing it for people who like to watch videos?
And actually, I remember seeing a poll on LinkedIn like ages ago, and it was like, what's your favorite way to consume content on this platform? And it had written, audio, video. And it was like a third. Right? There's people who like video. There's people who like long form writing. There's people who like audio. There's people who like all of it, right? There's people who like my great friend Philip. He does these like audio clips, but also has a really great email newsletter. And because I trust him to give good advice, I listen to the clips and I read the newsletter. Right? Even though, like, quite honestly, audio is like not at all my preferred way of consuming content unless it's music. Because I can't focus. It's like a background thing for me. And that's the way my brain works. It's not the way all people's brains work. And so, but it also doesn't mean that you have to create content in every single format if it doesn't feel like it matches you. Like, I've had so many people be like, I mean, I consider this a podcast, but like people being like, how come you don't have podcasts? And I'm like, I don't listen to podcasts. I don't identify as a podcaster. I don't like doing anything without video. So like, I just,
so then you get to a point where it's like, so what's the point?
Right. Well, and I always think from an authenticity point of view, this is like when you graduate, right? You graduate as authentic you. When someone can make you a recommendation, you should do LinkedIn Lives. And you are like, nah, that doesn't feel like something I would do. And just like not even let it bother you. I remember having this guy, I've definitely talked about this on the show before, reached out to me on LinkedIn, convinced that you had to do pre-recorded video. And I was like, I don't do pre-recorded video. I only do live video. Works for me, blah, blah, blah. And he kept coming back to try and convince me. I'm like, I actually said to him, like, dude, you're not going to convince me. I know what works for me. Go try and convince someone who can be convinced, which I don't think is anybody. Unless you've already pre-decided that you need to do video, in which case you decided.
And or if you prefer to do pre-recorded videos, because I'm sure there are people who prefer it that way, and that's totally fine too. Like,
totally fine.
I think the whole point is, for me at least, when I speak to people about their marketing and about their messaging, is like, find the stuff that works for you, that resonates with you, that resonates with the kind of people that you want to work with. Where do you find those people? Right? Like, because people, and you can find them anywhere, by the way.
Yes.
You know, because there's so many people who go like, well, my clients aren't on LinkedIn. And I'm like, well, there's, you know, what, 2 billion people on LinkedIn. So chances are.
I mean, how many clients do you need?
And I don't know, like, you know, I hate being on Facebook. So if I were to market my services through Facebook, I'm not going to get any clients because I cannot, it's an environment that doesn't work for me. Right. So I'm not going to be on there. I'm not going to be interacting with people because I don't want to spend time there.
And this is just, these are things that are like not right or wrong, folks. Like,
No,
if you
not
love
at
to be
all.
on Facebook or you love to be on
You'll be on
Instagram, be there, right? If you don't like being on LinkedIn because it feels too professional, like, don't, right?
Don't be on LinkedIn.
And there's, again, lots of things out there that will tell you, because I've met a lot of people who are on every platform because you're, quote unquote, supposed to be.
Yes.
But no, I mean, technically, we are live streaming to multiple places right now just because StreamYard allows that to be possible. But like, this follow-up conversations from this conversation on LinkedIn. Right? This is my place to hang out. And if you're watching this on YouTube or you're watching this on Facebook and you'd like to connect with me, come find me on LinkedIn. Right? So that's where I like to hang out. We're both on LinkedIn. Come find us there. But like, again, that's not right. You're not supposed to be on LinkedIn. You can be. It's an option. But even like, I have a lot of people who come to me being like, I need to be on LinkedIn. And I'm like, do you? You can be. I can show you how to optimize LinkedIn for your own personal brand. But like, do you? Because you don't really have to.
You don't have to. I think the main thing what we're trying to say is you don't have to anything. You know, like, I think it's all about embrace the human that you are and embrace the human that your potential clients are, and try and communicate. Have conversations with people. Figure out who your people are. You know, most of my clients I'll get through recommendations, and some of those recommendations find me in really obscure ways where you're like, how did that? All right.
It's called the universe, folks. It works in mysterious ways.
It does, but I think part of it is that who I show up as online is very much who I just am as a human being. I'm very bad at filtering myself.
Which honestly, I think from a social perspective is like the people who win, because you have less practice filtering yourself. And if you have many years, and I'm not so much, because I'm in marketing. So I feel like marketing as an industry has always been like a little bit more open to like creativity and things of that nature. Whereas if maybe you're a lawyer, an accountant, or things like that, from a professional perspective, things might seem more stringent. So getting in the practice, saying what you would say, doing what you would do, might take a little more practice. But the point at the end of the day is that there's things you would do and there's things you wouldn't do. And that's you being a human. That's your realness right there. And so if you can tap into the things you would do and stop doing the things you wouldn't do just because someone told you you should, then it creates an opportunity for you to connect with people who are looking for that. Maybe they're looking for authenticity. Maybe they're looking for a service, but you fill a gap for them
Yeah,
in being who you
when
are.
you feel that, yes. But even like I would say, like, even say that you're a lawyer and you're kind of struggling with this. Well, how do I show my personality and my authenticity in my marketing? Well, think about if you were to hire someone who's also in a profession that is maybe a little bit more, I don't know, let's say bookkeeper. I don't know. That's the example that came up in my mind. But like, so then what makes you pick one over another?
Right.
Right? What is it that makes you pick person A over person B? It's that, you know,
Well, and it's interesting because that, for those
it's
of
a
you who are
wrong
just
word for
listening,
this.
we're like making
Like,
little twinkle things with our fingers. So like I'm thinking about book, like the number one thing I outsourced when I started my business was my accounting, because it's not my area of doing. And I interviewed a lot of people. And I remember talking to this one lady who just made me feel like a complete imbecile. And I was like, this isn't gonna work out. I'm sure, and I'm sure she was like super expert, really good at what she did. That was not the questioning I had. But my questioning was like, could I show up on a monthly basis and work with this person to do what I need them to do? And my answer was no. I picked the person who felt the most knowledgeable, but the most coachy, right? I don't
yes,
want to
I
learn
need to
this.
be
I
able,
want you to do it, but I want to feel like I know what's going on without you making me feel like an idiot.
and I also want to be able to ask really silly questions. And I want you to say that it's going to be okay when I get nervous around tax season.
Right? And sometimes you don't necessarily like know your requirements for those things until you like go into it. But the point is, you don't even have to really know from a logic perspective. You feel it, right?
Yeah.
You feel like this is going to work or this is not going to work. If it feels good, then you can take it to the next level. If it doesn't, you're not going to. And with
So I
that
think like
first conversation,
but even if you feel like in your professional field, you have to have a sort of certain decorum, or, you can't wear pink headphones or bright polka dotted outfits and stuff like that. Um, then, but then again, like go back to, but how do I want to show? What is important to me as a human being, right? Like, what are my core values, and how how do those show up in the work that I do? Because if they show up in the work that you do, and they will, because that's why you do the work that you do. In case you didn't know, then it means like, so how do I then let those show up in how I speak about my work and how I market my business and how I show up in conversations with people? I think
yeah,
that's what it all boils down to, is like, what's at your core? What's it? And that's why I say, like, when I say like, oh, I'll make you communication assets with heart and soul, because it's about showing the heart of who you are and the soul, and that's the soul of your business, right?
I love it. I love it. And regardless of whether you are a solopreneur or you are a business owner, this is also true, right? The heart and soul goes into the business. And I would also encourage people to remember, not just believe, but remember that effort, that focus, that intention is what allows you to scale. It may not look exactly the same as someone else scaling, but no one else has scaled on your heart and soul before. This is your opportunity to do that. So it's probably going to look a little bit different, but if you bring that intention with you when you go to create, or even if you are outsourcing to create, you still use that as like the approval point or the filter point, then that's what you get to build on. Okay, Megs, I'm just realizing we are at the top of the hour, and this is how we do on this show. You already mentioned that people can find you on LinkedIn, but is there anywhere else where you would love for them to check you out as well?
I mean, connect to me on LinkedIn, send me a message if you want to hang out, because I like that stuff. And if you want to check out my website, it's houseofhives.com.
And there's lots of good information there, so I would recommend checking it out. Mags is tagged on this post on LinkedIn, so you can just click on her name and it'll take you right over to her profile. You can find all of the links from there. And as a reminder, this conversation today, I mean, we talked about a lot of things. It's not that simple. I mean, like the concept is simple, but the execution isn't that simple to just like be a human in your marketing. There's a lot of things that will pull you away from that. So it's an ongoing practice. It's an ongoing conversation. And so don't let this be the last time you're in a conversation about how to be human in your marketing. Let it be the first of many conversations. And whether that is conversations with Meg, conversations with me, conversations with each other that you meet in the chat, this is an opportunity for you to practice. What does it feel like for me to be a human as part of my marketing? And work your way to whatever wonderful destination that is going to create for you.
I like that. Let's all be human together.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, folks, right? Like, what if we could just be human together? And if that is something from an individual perspective, if as a marketer, as a business owner, as a solopreneur, as a janitor, as a lawyer, as a bookkeeper, as a whatever, if that was what we showed up with today, or how can we be human together? I mean, I think the world could look like a really different place. So let's start with marketing and see where it goes.
It just went like death.
What we do here. Everything is very deep and profound. Marketing is all surface level, but all the good stuff in marketing comes from heart and soul, right? And people are having this experience of the world. So we can like pretend we're having this experience we can have this experience and turn it off when we go do our marketing stuff, or we can harness it. We can like bring it into the stuff we want to do. And if you're not thinking about all those I mean, I just live in the world of philosophy, but like, if you're not, that's fine. You don't have to talk about that. But the point is to like harness your beingness into your marketing, because that's the most authentic thing you can be, which means it will resonate with the people who are most likely to like that. Which just shortens the sales cycle.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like if people don't like that, they're not your people. Like don't be afraid to repel some of the people, because they are not going to be your people. You don't want to work with everyone. So don't be too afraid to say, like, oh yeah, but if I show up like that, then some people are not going to like it. Great. You can't help all the people anyway. No. So, you know, as much as your marketing is about reaching other people, it's also about filtering those people.
I'm just thinking about, and I'll be honest with you, because if whoever's still watching this, because I know we're going long, but like my tagline on LinkedIn doesn't say anything about marketing. It talks about how I believe in togetherness based on uniqueness instead of being the same. And the number of people that I get who comment on that are like, oh my God, I believe this too. And I'm like, okay, we have alignment on our basic human beliefs as people. And I don't know that you need marketing services today, but that doesn't matter. What I'm doing is creating a group of people who believe in this. And at some point, there's somebody in that group who needs marketing help, and then I can help, right? But that's not the point on day one. The point is to create a connection with a person so they remember you for something you're proud about being, instead of being like another one. Fun fact, there are 1.7 million marketing specialists on LinkedIn.
That's a lot of them.
I choose between a million people, right? Who am I going to choose? Somebody I connected with, not because someone has a tagline that says marketing specialist. So, and you know that. Everybody knows that. Their own filters.
You might pick someone who's someone you trust connected with.
This is true. But also, this is the thing, right? Like, I've had lots of clients who, because of word of mouth, right? Like, oh, who knew you need is Tracy? And like, they're not even interviewing other people. They're just like interviewing me, okay? And I always force them to do a discovery call, because they need to know who you are first too, before I can agree that I can help you. Right?
Like,
Right, yeah.
you said earlier, like it's a two-way street. It's not just about them checking you out. It's about you checking them out as well.
Right. We have to do something together. Can we do something together? And if we can, cool. And if we can't, cool.
Also cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome, Megs. Well, it's always a pleasure speaking with you, my friend. Thank you so much for sharing all of your
We'll
wonderful
wait so
knowledge.
long.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, this is what we do on the show. I know I was talking to a lady who has like a 22-minute show, and I'm like, you will have to manage me because I'm just talking. Yeah. I just was straight up, right? Like, if you manage me effectively, I can execute on that. But if I just get into storytelling, that's not going to happen. Anyway, thank you all for watching the show today. You make the show go round, even though you make it go round faster if you did more commenting. Evan actually has a really cool comment here, but I can't open the link. So I'm going to leave that for you all. There's a cool link there in the chat about human AI. So go check that out. Thank you guys for showing up today. Megs, always a pleasure. And until next time, everybody, permission to do you.